Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya, Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Let's all say Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyaresha Tarane Srila Prabhupada Jai. Welcome to the grand finale. Well, I don't know how grand it is, but it is the finale. It's the final lesson of our Founder-Acharya series. We're down to the hardcore listeners. I don't see so many extras right now. Lesson 10, You are Srila Prabhupada. Before we look at some ways to access and nourish our personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada, let's consider how our Founder-Acharya is for everyone. So that's the nature of a Jagat Guru. He's not just a guru of a certain institution, but he's actually capable of delivering the Jagat, the whole world, the whole universe. So I chose this image for the title slide of the lesson because I find Prabhupada's expression and gesture particularly endearing. I don't know why, that's just me. You know how certain images hit you a certain way according to who you are. Does anybody have a favorite image of Prabhupada that they can describe so we can know what it is? Because there's tens of thousands of pictures of Prabhupada. Prabhupada was among the most recorded and photographed people of the 20th century. You have a favorite that you can describe so we know what it is? Yes?
The one where Prabhupada is doing arti for Krishna Balaram.
Oh yeah. That was in lesson 5. Okay, maybe I can ask you that. Of all the images I've shown you, which one's your favorite? Mine's coming up in this lesson. Alright, anyway, it probably depends on the time of day it is, right? And that's how it is with me, and there's so many favorites, you can't even... Now we will look at how Srila Prabhupada is for everyone. Okay. There's a very early ISKCON picture. You can tell by the clothing Prabhupada's wearing. It's such a simple cloth. Later on, he would be given so many fancy sweaters and shutters and silk dhotis. And this is in New York. It must be 1966. Prabhupada, for one, he's looking a little younger there even. You know, after his stroke in 67, you can actually notice on the recordings his voice drops a little. Has everybody heard the 66 recordings? Have you heard? You see, Prabhupada's voice is higher, and there's a certain urgency because he doesn't know how long he has to live. Of course, none of us do, but he had just arrived. No one knew anything about Krishna. And he's just begging everybody to understand what he's saying and give it to others, right from the beginning, before we even knew what he was talking about. There's one very touching recording where Prabhupada's speaking. Have you seen? Have you seen Krishna? Have you seen? He meant a picture, an image of Krishna. And then he realizes, you can hear him practically see, Prabhupada realizing that no one's ever seen even an image of Krishna. And then Prabhupada goes, oh, like, oh yeah, I'm in New York City, I could be on Mars, Jupiter, and no one's ever, oh. So, yeah, Prabhupada's urgency. Okay, universal teacher. In Prabhupada's 1935 public Vyasa Puja homage for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, delivered at the Bombay Gaudiya Math, Prabhupada declared, you might remember from lesson 4 that Prabhupada was selected to give the keynote address at the launch of the Bombay Gaudiya Math. And he gave a speech and he read his poem. But here's an excerpt from the speech, which used to appear in every Vyasa Puja, BBT book. They don't do it, everyone. Sometimes they do it. But it's quite a speech. Quote, the Acharya Dev, to whom we have assembled tonight to offer our humble homage, is not the guru of a sectarian institution or one out of many differing exponents of the truth. On the contrary, he is the Jagat Guru, the guru of all of us. The only difference is that some obey him wholeheartedly while others do not obey him directly. And that was in 1935. 36 years later, Prabhupada's in San Francisco, and after the Rath-Yatra there in 1971, and he's now the Founder-Acharya of ISKCON, 36 years later, Prabhupada, he gave an answer to a reporter's question that's sort of similar. Well, you see the screen now. It's sort of similar to what he said in 1935 about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta being a Jagat Guru. Some people obey him directly while others do not. Okay, so where's the mic?
In June 1971, when Srila Prabhupada attended the San Francisco Rath-Yatra, a reporter asked him how many disciples he had. Unlimited, Prabhupada said. Some admit and some don't admit. Admit you are a servant of Lord Krishna and your life will be a success.
Okay, so you got to be pretty pure to say something like that, right? I have unlimited disciples. Some admit, some don't. So it's the Jagat Guru thing. Prabhupada is a universal teacher. He's not preaching some limited sectarian time-bound message. He's preaching the absolute truth, good for all times and places, all people. So universal, that's one way Prabhupada is for everyone. Fully surrendered to and empowered by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and the previous Acharyas, our Srila Prabhupada was able to present Krishna consciousness with universal appeal. This is June 1974. Prabhupada and Satsut Maharaj have landed in Geneva, Switzerland. This is Guru Gauranga, my godbrother, who pioneered the Geneva Yatra. And notice how they're deplaning out of the belly of the plane. They don't do that anymore. It's something to do with security. It's not as secure to have people deplaning and planing and deplaning from the belly. But that's an older shot. Okay, so read this, Prabhu.
Global preacher.
In 12 years, Srila Prabhupada circled the globe 14 times and established the Krishna consciousness movement on every major continent.
Notice major. To the best of our knowledge, Prabhupada did not go to the poles. But recently, in the past couple of years, some Prabhupada initiates went to the South Pole. if you read the news report, because they wanted to go extend Prabhupada's mercy. So they went with some books, kirtan, some prasadam even, and visited some scientific station. And there's pictures of it, I think, on Dandavats. Every major continent. And
He also initiated thousands of followers and continues to inspire countless more to surrender to Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
so global preacher. He went where no Swami had ever gone before. Now, here's a quote from a letter. Somebody's inviting him to a Rath-yatra in San Francisco, actually. And Prabhupada's, let's see, where is he? He might be in Russia. Oh no, he's in... Anyway, he's responding to a letter. There's an invitation to attend the Rath-yatra in San Francisco. Quote, regarding your invitation that I attend the Rath-yatra festival in San Francisco on July 7th, this is 1974, it is possible that I may attend, depending on when I finish my European tour. I am due to arrive in Rome on May 23rd, then after a week, Geneva, then Paris, and possibly Stockholm, Germany, and England. Stockholm is capital of where? Sweden. Okay, good. If there is time, I can fly directly from Europe to Los Angeles. Did anybody ever fly from LA to London? I mean London to LA, or either way? Okay, how long did it take?
12 hours.
Maybe faster. I flew it in 78. It was a 14-hour flight. On People Airlines, one of these cheapo airlines that come and go, you know. The seats were like... Anyway, it was excruciating. It's 14 hours, just like a sardine, you know, in this little chair. At least tomorrow when I go on Virgin Australia, the seats are pretty good. Pretty nice, but it's still 15 hours. Directly from Europe to Los Angeles and go to the festival. Now, but when you go to LA, you still got to take a flight up to San Francisco. So you're still traveling. Then, as you suggest, go to Australia Rath-yatra via Hawaii. This is known as Jet Age Paribrajacharya. Now, Prabhupada didn't actually coin that, but a news report was brought to his notice from the Hindustan Times out of Delhi. And some journalists in Delhi noticed Prabhupada's itinerary, how it was like unprecedented. It was like more than UN diplomats, the way Prabhupada's traveling, you know. So the journalist said, this is no ordinary Swami, this is a Jet Age Swami. So Prabhupada says, Jet Age Paribrajacharya. But even though it was so amazing how Prabhupada was traveling so much, still you're going to get criticized, right? No matter what you do. So one critic of Prabhupada's opined that if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted Krishna consciousness in the Western countries, why didn't he go there himself? To which Prabhupada shot back, quote, so he left the credit for me. He loves his devotee more than himself. That's from Harishari's Transcendental Diary. Okay, so universal teacher, global preacher. Here's another way Prabhupada's for everybody. How many letters did Srila Prabhupada write? Do you know?
7,000.
Yeah, probably about that. You see over 6,500 in the database, but there's so many more that people haven't even turned in yet, you know. Or that weren't even, were lost. So, yeah, around 7,000. All right, Srila Prabhupada's for everyone. Who wants to read?
Matchless giver.
Matchless giver. And then read this.
Srila Prabhupada founded over 100 Hare Krishna temples, schools, farms, and restaurants, all while writing and publishing dozens of translations and commentaries on foundational Vaishnava scriptures.
So this is nothing short of superhuman. Did you ever try to write a book? Okay. Well, if you ever try to write even a letter, I mean, it requires a lot of concentration to say what you mean and mean what you say. That's an art that most people don't even know. Once the famous writer Ernest Hemingway was asked, why did you rewrite the ending of The Sun Also Rises 64 times? Either 64 or 44. I think it's 44. So Hemingway said, to get the words right. Because unless you're a liberated soul like Srila Jiva Goswami, or even they say Shakespeare, never changed a word. Writing means rewriting. But Prabhupada, he's traveling all over the world, and then wherever he is, he would set up, like if say he landed in some place at midnight, okay, it's time to translate. Didn't matter where he'd come from. Or it's 6 in the morning, it's time for the morning walk. Noon, it's time for the noon oil massage. 6 in the evening, it's time to greet the guests. Prabhupada was very regulated, but he was regulated in such a way that it didn't matter where he was. If he felt jet lag, he certainly didn't let on, because he just kept going and going and going. Yeah. So it's superhuman. So he's establishing all these centers, and at the same time he's writing books. That's why he begged us, please relieve me of management, which was GBC especially. If I have to think of some problem on the other side of the world, when I go to do my dictation at midnight or 1 in the morning or whatever, I can't concentrate. It gives me too much distraction. Every word has to be document, Prabhupada said. So to have the presence of mind to write books, and why did he write books at midnight? It seems kind of, why did he do that?
That's the only time he would get to himself peacefully.
That's right, because it was such a, and we, his disciples, had so many problems that he would have to, the only time he got to himself was when we were asleep. Right. So, yeah. So he's writing books, and he's doing the Hare Krishna explosion all over the world. It's just like inconceivable. Anything else? I guess that's all. Okay, matchless giver. While pioneering Krishna consciousness on many fronts over 12 years, how did Srila Prabhupada find the time to write so many books? Answer, he didn't sleep much, which he felt to be a waste of time. He would say that. Now I'm going to waste my time. Whereas I go to bed and I'm thinking, at last, the void, oblivion. But Prabhupada, he was so alive, he didn't want to sleep. And sometimes he didn't. He just would stay up, dictate through the night. Another short sleeper is the cow, to whom Srila Prabhupada would sometimes compare himself. In his memories of Srila Prabhupada, Guru Das reports that once in Bombay, he told Srila Prabhupada he was concerned that not enough people would show up for an engagement the devotees had arranged. Prabhupada replied, "No, I'm just like a cow. I give milk anywhere. That's what I like to do." And then one time, a center called up the center where Prabhupada was, because Prabhupada was flying from that center to the other center. And so the devotee calling up from the receiving center said, "So is Srila Prabhupada going to take prasadam here, where after he lands, or there before he leaves?" And so they asked Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, "Both places." Because I'm like a cow. I can graze in this pasture or that pasture. So he liked to compare himself to a cow, which I was happy to hear, because when I look at Prabhupada's face, especially his mouth, it kind of reminds me of a cow. That's just me.
All Krishna Prashadam.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Universal teacher, global preacher, matchless giver. And raise your hand if you can tell us where Prabhupada is there. No, but where is it? Anybody been to Los Angeles? I think. Yeah. So that's the new Dwarka Vyasasana. It pretty much looks the same. Nice crushed red velvet, very ornate asana. Usually when you see pictures of Prabhupada on this asana, and he used to play the gong in LA all the time. Usually he's looking right at you. But here he's looking up, kind of like he's looking at Krishna. Srila Prabhupada is for everyone. Shaktivesh avatar. Where's the... Okay, Manaji.
Shaktivesha Avatar. Unless one is empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one cannot spread the holy names of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra throughout the world. Persons who do so are empowered. Therefore, they are sometimes called Avesha avatars or empowered incarnations, for they are endowed with the power of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Now he's writing in the third persons, they are, but he's really describing himself. But that's what's so endearing about this, because Prabhupada was so transparent to Krishna, he would never direct people's attention to himself. It's all about Krishna. He called it the Hare Krishna movement, not the Bhaktivedanta Swami movement. But everything, and this is from a purport to a verse, where Kali Kalera Dharma Krishna Nam Sankirtan, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tar Pravartan. Unless one is empowered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he cannot spread the Sankirtan movement all over the world. So that's our Founder-Acharya. Always Krishna-centered, transparent, never calling attention to himself. Did I tell you the story about Sridhar Maharaj in Mayapur? Praising Prabhupada as a Shaktivesh avatar? Did I tell you? Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's 1976. It's in March, Mayapur festival time. And in 1973, Srila Prabhupada had taken a party of devotees across the Ganges to Sridhar Maharaj's mutt, the Devananda Saraswat mutt, visited him. And so a few years later, Sridhar Maharaj is returning the visit. And it's very nice because he's come to praise Srila Prabhupada. And devotees are there. And so he's reminiscing. He says, Swami Maharaj, you know, when Guru Maharaj sent those preachers to Europe and they didn't have much success, we couldn't understand what it meant that every town and village His holy name will be preached, because these people that we were trying to preach to, they were just animals. They couldn't even consider following the regulative principles. So maybe that prediction every time, maybe it's some kind of poetic metaphor, maybe it's a hyperbole, an exaggeration, a figure of speech. But then, Swami Maharaj, you've done it. You've actually taken people from all over the world, brought them to Mayapur, fulfilling Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prediction. Therefore, Shaktivesh. He acknowledged Prabhupada had that empowerment because Prabhupada had the depth of surrender. Therefore, he was given the depth of empowerment to turn Videshis, Mlechas, Yavanas into Vaishnavas, Praya Vaishnavas at least, aspiring. Although Srila Prabhupada's activities were those of a Shaktivesh avatar, since he was absolutely transparent to Krishna, he never thought of or presented himself as such. Such a great soul is very rare. Now, here's the point of starting with Srila Prabhupada's for everyone, right? If Srila Prabhupada is for everyone, he is certainly for everyone in his own ISKCON, as we will now hear. So you remember that first element of the Founder-Acharya resolution, 1994. Now we're going to look at, there's the picture that grabbed me. As soon as I saw that picture, it just, wow. The Prabhupada's looking right at you. Did I tell you where that came from, that picture? You know? Or how that came to be? Prabhupada left New York City, January 17th, 1967, took his first airplane ride to San Francisco. The New York devotees felt completely lost, bereft. And so they wrote to Swamiji, Swamiji, we don't know what to do. What do we do? You're not here. And Prabhupada said, well, just follow my instructions. Remember I told you, you can take turns giving class, you can go and Sankirtan, you can keep doing back to Godhead, and put my picture on my seat. Well, we don't have a picture. Oh, okay. So Swamiji enlisted the help of Roger Siegel, who became Guru Das, who was pretty handy with the camera. And Roger at the time, he just sort of arranged some makeshift studio kind of shots. And they became pretty famous, like this one. This was on the cover of Bhakti-Gata just after Prabhupada passed in November 77. So in the 78, or excuse me, in the December issue, it was called He Lives Forever. That was the title of the cover. And this is the shot. And this, I remember this just grabbed me when I came. I thought, wow, this is my spiritual, this is a bona fide spiritual master. He's looking into my soul. Okay, we're going to look at all the items of that 1994 resolution as a good example of Prabhupada's position and the responsibility of those, especially the initiators who come after him. Okay. All right, Prabhu. Didn't you already read? Okay. Give it to Shugadin. Yeah, well, it's...
It's called Founder-Acharya. 1994 JC Resolution number 35. The Founder-Acharya statement. A. Srila Prabhupada is the foundational Siksha Guru for all his devotees.
And then, as we read it, because he has presented and realized the conclusions of the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. Okay, B, it says that I'm going to give you just enough to get the idea of each point.
B. Srila Prabhupada's instructions are the essential teachings for every ISKCON devotees.
Yeah, essential. You know, we're not living in a vacuum. We hear so many teachings, right? And that's okay, but we test them. We measure them against what Prabhupada's given us. Prabhupada's teachings are the touchstone, the testing stone, against which all others are measured. C.
C. Srila Prabhupada's books are the embodiment of his teachings and should be accepted as the standard by all future generations of ISKCON.
Yeah, now every generation after Prabhupada should produce their own literature, media, to continually update the parampara for the new time, place, people, circumstance. That's fine. But the test of the value of whatever we produce should be if it's inspiring people to come to Prabhupada's teachings. Yeah, and like sometimes people say, oh, you know, Guru Maharaj, he's written so many books, and there are so many kirtans, so I don't have time to hear Prabhupada. No, those are the side dishes. They're good, they should be good, they should inspire us, but they should inspire us to read Prabhupada's books, hear Prabhupada's recordings. Think of Prabhupada's Vani as the main course in the meal, the entree, and everything else as the hors d'oeuvres. They should be the appetizers to get us to Prabhupada's. So that's when everything's in balance, when Prabhupada he's the center. Okay, and D?
D. Srila Prabhupada should be worshipped daily by every ISKCON member.
Yeah, because after we recovered from the zonal Acharya era, then still people were, instead of going to Prabhupada's Guru Puja, sometimes they would just go in a separate room and worship their Guru Maharaj. But that's not right, because Prabhupada is the foundational Guru of everyone, so everyone has to go to Prabhupada's Guru Puja. And then, I think, once a year is the GBC law? You can worship your own personal, regular Guru in the temple. So, yeah. So there's a reason for that, because it's the Founder-Acharya who holds everything together. E.
Every spiritual master is responsible to guide his disciple to follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions.
Yeah. Or as that Guru said in the story I told, he's supposed to enrich, enhance, and deepen your relationship with Prabhupada. Okay, so that's okay. So that's the main way he's for everyone, is in ISKCON, is that he's at everyone's Founder-Acharya. Now, despite more Founder-Acharya resolutions since then, there have been others. On the whole, we've been slow to understand that our relationship with our Founder-Acharya is foundational and pivotal, the relationship around which all others turn. What's the example I gave at the end of the class? Think of the Founder-Acharya as like the sun. And then, have you read this Giriraj Maharaj book, Many Moons? It's about God brothers and God sisters of our first generation of Prabhupada's followers, who, by dint of their surrender to Srila Prabhupada, they just became beautiful people. Yeah, moons. Not stars, not twinkling stars, but moon-like devotees. So you see their heads on the cover of his book. Many moons. And that's what we have to be. We have to be orbiting Prabhupada, but moon-like, reflecting his beautiful lights, we can also turn everybody to Krishna. So on this point, we don't need more legislation, we need more education. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. And now we're going to go into, connect with your Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so what did I do here? I made a collage. And this is by no means complete. This reminds us of how many sides, how many aspects Srila Prabhupada has. I call Prabhupada here a transcendental Renaissance man. Are you familiar with the concept of the Renaissance man? Who's the archetypical Renaissance man in secular society? Yeah, Da Vinci. Why? Because his intelligence was so multifaceted, right, that he gave us everything from the Mona Lisa to the blueprints for the helicopter. You don't usually find the scientist and the fine artist in the same body. But Prabhupada's much more than that. So here we have, what do I call it here? Prabhupada the plain liver, bravely pioneering plain living and high thinking. You know where Prabhupada got that phrase, plain living and high thinking? You know where? It comes from a British poem. Prabhupada was British educated. There's a poem written in 1802 or 1803 by William Wordsworth. It starts like this: plain living and high thinking are no more. Wow, this is in 1803? Why did he say that? Because the Industrial Revolution was coming in. People were leaving the farms to go to these hellish cities. Yeah, plain living and high thinking are no more. So Wordsworth could hardly imagine what the world's become. Like in America, America started in, well, officially, 1776, the revolution, and 1789, the first president. So in those days, 97% of Americans were growing their own food, because there was no supermarket, or you just, had to milk your own, grow your own. What percentage of Americans grow the food today for Americans? Do you have any idea?
15, 10.
Raise your, you have any, no, not just guessing, but have you read any? It's a little over 1%. And guess who's doing that? The agribusiness people, who don't really care about our health. They care about profit. So you always find, some disease is cropping up because their GMO hasn't been properly vetted by the Food and Drug Administration and all. Anyway, it's still, the organic movement is certainly growing, but it's still very tiny compared to what most people eat. So Prabhupada is trying to get us back to living the way Krishna lives. And here is Prabhupada, the world Sankirtan party leader. In the 60s, Prabhupada talked about going around the world with his disciples on a world Sankirtan party. But then his movement spread so fast that his own, he had temples all over the world. So devotees were doing it themselves on the street corners, like in Melbourne and Sydney. And you still go out here, 3 times a week you go out?
2 times.
Twice, okay. We go out once a week in Tucson. But the World Sankirtan Party leader, and some devotee approached him about going around the world on a boat, a yacht, and putting it at all the ports. Prabhupada said, yes, do it. Don't just talk about it. So where's Prabhupada here, do you know? This person became a Swami. Prabhupada is in Golden Gate Park. He's sitting on what was known as Hippie Hill in the Summer of Love, 1967. Prabhupada's not afraid to sit down with the hippies. There's movies, maybe you've seen the movies. Prabhupada, he's in the middle of a circle, and all these young people are dancing around him like wild horses, holding hands, and then the inner ring is going this way and the outer ring is going that way. And Prabhupada is just doing the Swami step, He's like a maestro, like conducting a 3-ring circus or something. Prabhupada is like the lotus untouched by water. Okay, World Sankirtan Party leader. Okay, so you know where Prabhupada is there? Okay, who's this? You know her. Malati. A younger edition of Malati. 1967 in the Pacific Ocean by the on the beach. Those early devotees said that Swamiji used to take us to the beach and we'd have these big bonfire kirtans and roast potatoes. We'd offer potatoes and offer roasted potatoes to Krishna. And Prabhupada would lead these kirtans. And then Malati said, one time at the end of the kirtan, Prabhupada led Prema Dvani prayers. And then at the end of the Prema Dvani prayers, Jai Om Vishnupad, and he said, all glory is to the Pacific Ocean. All glory is to the Pacific. He said it 3 times. And they thought it was so cool that he was appreciating their Pacific Ocean where they used to surf and So Prabhupada, but I call this one the Vaishnavi Empower, because if you know Malati, she's a real go-getter. She's a good manager. So Prabhupada, when he would accept people like Malati and Jamuna and Vishaka and so many others into the movement, he didn't insist that they assume a kind of Vedic role, because he could see they were educated and trained in other ways. So he made them leaders. Yeah, and so that's why you always hear, especially senior Prabhupada initiate Madhajis, talk about how Prabhupada empowered us. He let us lead kirtan and speak, etc., etc. So that's Prabhupada, the Vaishnavi Empower. And here's Prabhupada, the consummate cook. Nobody could cook like Srila Prabhupada. And those who he trained, they also became famous cooks. And so many places that I go in the world, they claim this picture as their own. Oh yeah, Prabhupada did that in, right here in Vrindavan. Oh, Prabhupada did that right here in Mississippi. Prabhupada did that, right here, and it's amazing how many. As far as I know, this actually is a shot from the Mississippi farm in 1975. But perhaps there are similar shots in other places, so maybe it's legitimate that different places claim that as their own. But there's Prabhupada's cooker. And then Prabhupada showing devotees how to make something, I think. I'm not sure what it was, maybe a puri or something. Okay, so Prabhupada, the consummate, the prasadam master. Here's Prabhupada, I say, the literary fountain. Does anybody recognize that shot? In 1976, there was, I think it was Yadavar Prabhu. He and his wife were the main movie makers. So they made this short film about how the books were produced, the BBT books. It was called Brilliant as the Sun, right from the Bhagavatam. You know the verse? Krishne svadham upagatehi. It's 1:340, I think. Dharma, fact check, you can fact check. Dharma jnana dibiksaha kalo nashtadrishamesha purarnarko dhanoditaha. This is what, when you see the movie, you see Prabhupada dictating now the translation. That's how the movie, it opens with that. This Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it is arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Those who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in this age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So there's Prabhupada consulting a commentary, because he had a book of 12 commentaries. He'd read them and then he'd make his own commentary, weaving in some things that previous acharyas had said, plus weaving in his own unprecedented realizations from his unprecedented spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. So there was this, I think it was about 18-20 minutes, and it would start here where Prabhupada was the fountain, he was the source, he was dictating the verses and purports, and then you see a shot of the BBT of how they produce computers, transcribers, editors, proofreaders, indexers. Then you see somebody going out with the books on the street and meeting somebody who took a book, got inspired, came to the temple, joined, and he'd go out. It was like and Prabhupada loved it. He thought it was a great promotion for the BBT and for book distribution. And literary fountain. And does anybody raise your hand if you know where?
London.
Well, Bhaktivedanta Manor. It's not Radha Londonishwar, but it's Bhaktivedanta Manor. Janmashtami 1973. He's installing Sri Sri Radha Gokulananda. You've been to the manor? It's really a wonderful place. It's getting even more wonderful every year. And who's the new president there? Starting in January, do you know? No, not Malati. A contemporary of Malati's. Vishaka Bhattaji is going to be the new president of Bhaktivedanta Manor. And the deciding factor was that this is the person, of all the persons that they were thinking of. Because Srila Prabhu, he's got brain cancer and he's becoming less and less able. But the youth, the Pandavasane people, the youth, the boys and the girls, they like Vishaka the best. Because she's a mother and a master. She's got two beautiful Vaishnavi daughters, and she's a master speaker and writer and photographer. So she's going to be the new president of the manor. So what Prabhupada's doing, he's installing Sri Sri Radha Gokulananda on Janmashtami 1973. And you might have seen Prabhupada leaping in the film of this, the Hare Krishna people. Yeah, it's a wonderful occasion. And as Prabhupada leaps, the devotees start leaping. Deity installer, and much more, a true transcendental Renaissance man. So to connect with Srila Prabhupada is to connect with one or more of his magnanimous aspects. Remember I said before, Prabhupada is too all-sided to get all of them. So when we connect with Prabhupada, inevitably, due to our own natures, we're attracted to a certain aspect of him. In the next slide, we'll see and hear how we can all connect with Srila Prabhupada in a foundational way. So the next slide is a way that everybody can connect. And the next slide is an audio clip. It's not such a good recording, but you can hear it and see the words. Here's the context. My god sister Srimati Rukmini Devi, who is the wife of Anuttama Prabhu, the worldwide ISKCON communications minister. You ever seen Rukmini? Has she ever been here? Okay. So she was just a 16-year-old girl in 1968, and she she had followed the householder couples whom Prabhupada was calling from San Francisco to open up London. And they stopped in Montreal, Canada, that's northeast Canada. And Prabhupada was holding initiations. So she hadn't been with the devotees very long, but she's very sincere. And so her friends from San Francisco put her forth as a candidate, and Prabhupada accepted her on August 15, 1968. And then 3 days later, on the 18th, Prabhupada's giving, he was Prabhupada by then, he was giving Bhagavatam class. And then you hear on question and answer, young Rukmini ask a question. And she says, when you're not here, I feel so far away from you. I feel so distant. It's like she's saying how lonely she'll be when she's not with Prabhupada physically. Now Prabhupada doesn't start talking about Vani and Vapu. He uses the words physical and vibration, because he's spoon-feeding us. This is 1968. Vedic concepts, not using Sanskrit, just using English. So Prabhupada gives a beautiful answer of how she shouldn't think like that. I think Prabhupada says, that you should not think. Yeah. And then he explains how to be with your spiritual master all the time, even when you're not with him physically. How to be with him spiritually. And he makes a beautiful analogy. Listen to this. Okay?
That you should not think. There are two conceptions, the physical conception and the vibration conception. The physical conception is temporary. The vibration conception is eternal. Just like we are enjoying or we are relishing the vibration of Krishna's teachings. So by vibration he is present. As soon as we chant Hare Krishna or chant Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavad, so he is present immediately by his vibration. So we should give more stress on the sound vibration, either of Krishna or of the spiritual master, then we'll feel happy and no separation.
I love that, because Krishna was last on earth as he is, Rajendra Nanda Krishna in his original form, over 5,000 years ago. And yet, as soon as we open the Gita, he's there. If we're really receptive to that, that's the key. So Prabhupada said, whether it's Krishna or the Guru, you just have to be present with their instructions, and you will feel happy and no separation. So Rukmini was very happy to hear that. Now the first and foremost way we can all connect with Srila Prabhupada is by becoming keen students of his spoken and written word. Regular attentive hearing from our Founder-Acharya, especially while serving with his serious and sincere followers, grounds us in the foundational relationship that will sustain and enrich all other relationships. And now I give two classic examples. Here are two legendary devotees who did just that. There's Sriman Jayananda Prabhu, whose name you've seen on the calendar, but maybe you don't know anything about him. This is again Golden Gate Park. This time it's the winter. There's Prabhupada, Jayananda. See how big Jayananda is. Of course, Prabhupada was physically short. Okay? And there's Srimati Jamuna Devi. They both, of course, since passed on, with Srila Prabhupada, walking, again, Golden Gate. Now, why did I pick them? Because they both joined at the same time? Well, let's see what I say here. Jayananda Prabhu and Jamuna Devi were among the first to join Srila Prabhupada's movement in San Francisco in 1967. Deeply dedicated to Srila Prabhupada from the start, they were also as different as night and day. So they both joined in San Francisco in January 67, under very different circumstances. They came from way different circumstances. But they both loved to hear Srila Prabhupada. That was their life and soul. And so similarly, if we develop that similar taste, we can also connect with Srila Prabhupada. But we'll also connect differently. And now I'm going to explain what I mean here. To meet Jayananda was to meet a big, strong, humble worker in Srila Prabhupada's mission, especially at Rath-yatra time. Srila Prabhupada's incredible strength and humility came through in Jayananda's character and behavior. So I think I've talked a little bit about in the temple room in Bhagavatam about both of them. But I never knew Jayananda until the last year when he had leukemia, blood cancer, and he came to LA to pass away. But in a more positive sense, he came to LA to help LA launch their first Rath-yatra, which he never saw because he passed away before it happened. But he came in January, February, like that. And he was masterminding the construction of the first LA Rath-yatra carts. Huge wheels and big floats. So it was extraordinary to meet him, and because he was such a surrendered soul and so humble, he would just knock you down with humility. And so it was just before Lord Nisringa's appearance. On the calendar, as you know, it's always his disappearance. And it was Sunday morning, I think it was May 1st, and we had just thrown him a surprise birthday party on the previous Thursday. By then he could hardly see. He was in a wheelchair, but his assistant Indradev Prabhu wheeled him out to the lot where he thought he was going to check on the carts. And he's like surprised by 400, there was 400 devotees in New Dwarka. It was the biggest center. This is pre-Alachua. And he was amazed. And even though he was so weak, for about over a half hour, he just told the story of every Rath-yatra he was involved in. From 67 right up to the one that he's helping to launch. And then there's a big cake that had been offered to Lord Jagannath. And even though he hadn't been eating, he couldn't even eat, he forced himself to eat some of that cake offered to Lord Jagannath. It was like falling, the crumbs were falling all over his mouth. He couldn't even eat it. And then, amidst a rip-roaring kirtan, he was wheeled back to his quarters by his assistant. And his assistant said later, Jayananda said to me, "This weekend, I'm leaving this weekend." He had this sense that he was leaving. So he left on a Sunday morning during Brahma Muhurta. But Saturday night, he was in his room and he was delirious, but his delirium was this. He was calling out orders to his men. You got to call this lumberyard. You got to go to that shop. You got to get this tool. He was in samadhi, actually. But he was also physically, leaving this world. So a devotee heard him through the walls, because these devotee apartments had very poor insulation in those days. So he went into Jayananda's room, and then he went and he got Ramaswar Maharaj, and he got the president, Babu Brahan, and the head of the BBT manager, and there was just a few people there. And I was living in my BBT apartment, and I was a little late for Mangal Arati. Some things never change. So I was running toward the temple, and the concha started to blow. And before I could go in the temple door, it's one of these push doors, the door flew open toward me, and it was one of the characters that Jayananda had engaged in building the cart, one of these rough and tough guys that wasn't able to really follow the principles but loved to serve with Jayananda. And he had Lord Jagannath's garland. And he knew what was going on. Somebody had alerted him. So he was running across the street. I didn't know what was going on. I just went into Mangal Arati. I didn't want to be late. But what would happen was, Jim Jim ran across with a garland across the street into Jayananda's quarters. As the conchas were blowing, he garlanded Jayananda. Jayananda couldn't chant anymore. He was lying on a tape of the old Hare Krishna Kirtan from 26 Second Avenue. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And he passed away. It was like a storybook departure. You know, the conchas are blowing, the garland is on him, he's hearing Hare Krishna Kirtan. Meanwhile, we're in the temple, and something extraordinary is going on. Usually the way Mangalarti starts is it starts very slowly and sedately and everybody's swaying. And then maybe by the end people will get more and more energetic and vigorous. But in this case, from the get-go, everybody's like being lifted off the ground by some unseen energy. We're all just, you know, and we don't know why, but we're all in ecstasy, right? And then at Nrsinga prayer time, during just before Nrsinga prayers, before or after, I forget. Anyway, Ramaswara Maharaj comes in and he said, Jayananda Prabhu has left this world. We're like, wow! And it's bittersweet, of course. We're sorry to lose his association, but it's sweet that he's gone to rejoin Srila Prabhupada. And then, after, you know, Tulsi Puja, etc., then we all go outside onto Watsika Avenue, and we see this car from the coroner's office with a blue light, and they've come for the body. It was such a contrast to this glorious departure. Now these guys are going to come and, you know, officially determine the cause of death. And anyway, so if you met Jayananda, you were accessing Prabhupada's incredibly hard-working side, unbreakable determination, unbreakable surrender to his Guru Maharaj. And you became like that. Now Jamuna, you know, to meet Jamuna, what do I say? To meet Jamuna was to meet a queen of devotion, expressed especially through her cooking, music, and exquisite deity worship. Srila Prabhupada, the cultural conqueror, came through in Jamuna's character and behavior. Yeah, so Jamuna was totally different side. But you were also experiencing Prabhupada, another side of that. I think I told you the story in the temple about hearing for Jamuna was her life and soul, and when she went to India to the Kumbh Mela, remember that? Yeah. Anyway, okay. So different as they were, Jayananda and Jamuna shared a deep love of hearing from Srila Prabhupada. By developing a similar love, a unique aspect of Srila Prabhupada's glories will also manifest through us. It's not just for Jayananda and Jamuna, but if we get really inspired by Srila Prabhupada, by an aspect of him, one or more, then when people meet us, they're going to be meeting that aspect of Srila Prabhupada. We can also be transparent to Prabhupada in our own unique way. Okay, so then I say connect. Okay, where's the mic? All right, you ready?
Connect by finding and making your best contribution to our Founder-Acharya's mission.
Yeah, so that's possible when we find our mission, right? Remember finding our mission in the mission? Now, in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada gives a hint of how to connect with the Founder-Acharya. So why don't you read that?
When one becomes serious to follow the mission of the spiritual master, his resolution is
Tantamount, it means amounts to, it's the same as.
His resolution is tantamount to seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
That's quite a statement, huh? When you become serious to follow the mission, it's as good as seeing God. That's what Prabhupada's saying. Now later in the purport, Prabhupada says this, to underline the point. In conclusion, if a disciple is very serious to execute the mission of the spiritual master, he immediately associates with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the only secret of success, in seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead of being eager to see the Lord in some bush of Vrindavan, Prabhupada can't resist taking a swipe at the Sahajas, right? Instead of being eager to see the Lord in some bush of Vrindavan, while at the same time engaging in sense gratification, if one instead sticks to the principle of following the words of the spiritual master, he will see the Supreme Lord without difficulty. And Prabhupada would tell us, my Guru Maharaj used to say, don't try to see God, you work in such a way that God will see you. Boy, he said that in November 1966, Gita lecture. Now near the end of our Founder-Acharya lesson, we still may wonder, does developing our foundational relationship with Srila Prabhupada mean we are somehow slighting or jumping over our Diksha and Shiksha gurus? That's the best jumper I could find on Google Images. And it's not a monkey. Anybody know what that is? It's native to Madagascar and the Comoro Islands off the coast of East Africa. What is it?
A lemur?
Yeah, lemur. Lemur. It rhymes with the bone in your leg, femur. So there's a lemur. So no jumping, please. Now here's how this works. Is this, it used to be a big thing. No jumping. Did they say that around here? Or? Okay, I think that's because you get it. That it's not jumping to be fixed on the Founder-Acharya. But here's an interesting history here. In the early 1970s, as more devotees started to visit India, some were fascinated by Gaudiya Math books available in English, especially those of Srila Bhaktivinoda and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So they asked Srila Prabhupada if they could read them. Let's listen to Prabhupada's response. Now here's the context. It's December 1973. It's pretty early. In principle, there's nothing wrong with reading the books of the previous acharyas. In fact, in his purport to the very first verse of Bhagavatam, it's a multi-page purport, and by the end of the purport, Prabhupada's encouraging the readers to read the works of the Goswamis. But before you can do that, you've got to be grounded in your own Founder-Acharya's teachings. So here's what Prabhupada said in response to the question, can we read Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Bhaktivinoda's books? This is in December 1973, early on.
You cannot imagine what my spiritual master said. Or even if you read some books, you cannot understand unless you understand it from me. This is called parampara system. You cannot jump over to the superior guru, neglecting the next acharya, immediate next acharya.
So that almost sounds contradictory to what we've been teaching, right? I'm saying we should be grounded in the Founder-Acharya first and then aspire. But here's Prabhupada saying you should not neglect the next acharya, immediate next acharya. But here's the context. Since during his brief time with us, Srila Prabhupada was the only bona fide guru we knew, we didn't deeply understand his unique position as our Founder-Acharya. Now, after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, ISKCON's new gurus sometimes confused following him with imitating him, and the consequences were devastating. So over time, we've come to realize that a prime duty of our Shiksha and Diksha gurus is to deepen, enhance, and enrich our foundational relationship with Srila Prabhupada. If no jumping over means no neglecting one's immediate next acharya, how much more does that apply to Srila Prabhupada, our foundational acharya, from whom we derive our core identity and through whom we see all teachers and teachings. So the Founder-Acharya is not simply our upline, to use a multi-level marketing term. He's not simply our upline in the parampara. He's not simply a previous acharya. Rather, he's that spiritual master through whom we see all teachers and teachings. So to be Founder-Acharya focused is not jumping over. Rather, it's required. Okay, now, so As we get to know ourselves in relation to Srila Prabhupada, with a cool head we will be able to aspire for Diksha and Shiksha Gurus who can help us make our best contribution to his mission. The more deeply we connect with Srila Prabhupada, the more responsibility we have to pass on his unique legacy to others. So, I don't know if I told you, I think it was 2014 maybe, in Mayapur. Have you ever been to Mayapur during Srila Prabhupada's Tirobhav? It takes place in Prabhupada's Pushpa Samadhi, the big building. An operation, the BVT, shared the cost of building. And every Tirobhav, they assemble us remaining, as I said, endangered species. Prabhupada initiates first generation of his followers, and they put us in a corner or on the side, as you're looking at, you've been to Prabhupada's Samadhi? Okay. So you're looking at that big brass, larger-than-life Murti, and then as you're looking on the left side, to the left of that altar, then they put us on cushions. And then everywhere else, on the steps and below and above, you see everybody else. Because most people never saw Prabhupada physically, right? So some of the devotees, Ambarish and Bhavananda Prabhu and Mahatma and whoever's left, we're sharing our memories. And then they passed the mic to me. And I was in the third year of teaching Founder-Acharya, and people have been coming up to me and saying, "Oh, Suresvara, I can't imagine what it's going to be like when the last Prabhupada disciple leaves this planet. What are we going to do?" And I'm like, "What is this?" So I took the mic, and I went up and I paid my obeisances to that big brass murti, and then I just went around with a microphone. It's got a long cord, and I was like in the face of all these people in the audience, and I was saying, don't tell me this anymore, don't come up to me anymore and say that you can't imagine what the Hare Krishna movement's going to be like when the last Prabhupada disciple has left. No, it's the responsibility of everybody, every generation has to imbibe Srila Prabhupada's life, teachings, mood, and mission, so you can pass it on. And in fact, you folks have it better because there's so much more available of Prabhupada now through all these recordings that we never had. So please don't think it's just all about us who are rapidly diminishing. So the next slide is called Imbibe and Impart Srila Prabhupada's legacy, because this is really important. Or else it's just going to die. That's what time does. So, there's Prabhupada with his right hand in his bead bag, left hand gesturing, making a point. Okay, let's look at this. Is what I chose, the text I chose for this slide is my favorite purport of how to imbibe and impart Prabhupada's legacy. So it's 141 purport, Bhagavatam. It's an early purport. It's the appearance of Sri Narada, and the verse is all about Shonaka Rishi congratulating Sutta for being a fit representative of Srila Vyasadeva. And, okay, so where's the mic? Okay, Prabhuji.
Personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous Acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous Acharya, and at the same time, he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter or the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained.
This is Prabhupada's own emphasis. This is his italics. He put that right in the original text.
No obscure meaning should be excluded out of it. Yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization.
This is called realization. So Prabhupada had imbibed the principles from his Guru Maharaj, and then he was presenting those principles, applying those principles in fresh ways, in unprecedented ways. Prabhupada would say, if I have any credit, it's that I haven't changed anything. He was changing so many things, but he wasn't changing principles. He was adjusting details. So to do that, to have the sense of how to do that, that's called realization. And that realization comes again from the depth of one's surrender. And then you're empowered to know how to present Krishna consciousness according to the time, place, and people in a way that they can relate. So today, we have the digital age, it's the new millennium, and social media and all this. So like at Tucson, where I come from, we're blessed to have a nice mix of senior devotees, like me, or analogs. We're old analogs and linear folk. But we have these nice junior devotees, and they're so tech savvy and they're so plugged into social media. So they're helping us reach out, to the students through social media. Otherwise, we wouldn't know how to do it. So that's a great example of how we have to keep updating the parampara. We have to know how to reach people. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did this in his Brajmandal Parikrama, 1932. He famously was using all the latest technology of the day to present Krishna consciousness, and he would be criticized by the caste Brahmins. What is this? This is Maya, And so Bhaktisiddhanta made some famous comments about that. There's one thing he said was, if you say, I'm going to bathe in this part of the Ganges because that's where I've always gone to bathe, but then if you go back later and the Ganges has changed course, you're going to have to go where the course has changed. Otherwise you're going to dry up in the other place. So there's always a tension between tradition and innovation. If we just say, well, we do it this way because we've always done it this way, that's a red flag. Beware of that. Because with the changing times, we have to know how to update our presentation. Not to water it down or change the message, but just to reach people and put it in terms that they can relate to. Interesting manner for the understanding of it. This is called realization. The more we immerse ourselves in our Founder-Acharya's life, teachings, mood, and mission, the more we will understand how to be both faithful and fresh as we represent him. That is, present him all over again. To represent means to represent, present all over again, amid ever-changing times, places, and people. Srila Prabhupada wants us all to carry his legacy and become regular gurus, not to imitate him or replace him, but to follow in his footsteps. And then I say what I just told you. Whenever younger devotees say they can't imagine what ISKCON will be like after the last Prabhupada disciple leaves the planet, I become more convinced how important it is for all generations of devotees to understand our foundational identity as Prabhupada Anugas, Prabhupada followers. Imbibe his unique legacy and impart it to others. And so for the last slides, what we do is, I take a page out of Ravinder Swarup Prabhu's book. He was part of our Prabhupada Position Committee, and in 2014 the GBC published the book from our committee that he basically wrote, and we put him through different drafts and editing suggestions. It's called Srila Prabhupada, the Founder-Acharya. Did anybody ever see this book? GBC published it. Well, that's pretty telling. Nobody's even seen it. It was in print. It was pretty circulating a lot in 2014, 2015. And it's available online. Anybody can just Google Srila Prabhupada, the Founder-Acharya booklet, and it'll come up. You can just download it. It's about 90, 100 pages. It's a very scholarly book on the position of the Founder-Acharya, where Ravinder gives historical and philosophical evidence for Srila Prabhupada's position, and the GBC has adopted as their position on Prabhupada's position. So now, at the end of his book, Ravinder lists like bullet points. He boils it all down to 8 or 9 bullet points to show the benefits of deeply understanding Prabhupada's position. So let's Maybe read one each. Where's the... You got it? Okay, Mataji.
Generation after generation will be able to receive the special mercy offered by Srila Prabhupada. The path back to Godhead he opened will become ever increasingly traveled.
So, special mercy. Why? Because our Founder-Acharya happens to be the Senapati Bhakta, the mantra upasaka, the one predicted. He's a very confidential servant of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Radha and Krishna. So we're not sectarian. We're not saying to imitate certain religionists who say, we don't say, Prabhupada is the way, the light, the truth. No one cometh unto Krishna except by Srila Prabhupada. That's an echo of certain sectarian Christians. Right? We don't say that. But the way Prabhupada is opened is special mercy. It is such a rich and supportive path. I mean, look at all the centers Prabhupada opened up all over the world. As I said, he started an irrigation project, right? Guru Swamis and yogis will say, the well does not go to the thirsty must come to the well. But Prabhupada, he started an irrigation project all over the world. He's not content with yogi answers. So why not get aboard Prabhupada's spaceship back home? It's the best. I mean, just impartially, objectively, if you look at any other Sangha or Prabhupada's offered so much facilities. There was books, the deity worship, prasadam, yeah, so many. You can travel anywhere in the world practically, and you can be at a Hare Krishna temple or a Govinda's. Even in Tucson, Arizona, the desert, the southwest desert of America. Okay, Mataji, why don't you keep reading? That's all right.
Srila Prabhupada's active presence will secure the unity and integrity of ISKCON, strengthening both the GBC and Guru-disciple bonds.
Yes, because this whole thing has been an issue for so many years, and the GBC sort of resolved it with that resolution. Conflicting lines of authority, right? The GBC, regional secretaries, temple presidents, I mean, they even have other global duty officers. They have so many different... So that's kind of a managerial line of authority. And then you have guru and disciple. So sometimes it's a conflict, right? The guru gives an order, and the disciple latches onto that. But then it conflicts for where the disciple is serving. But Guru Maharaj wants me to do that, but the temple president wants me to do this. Well, if we're really all focused on cooperating, then it won't be managerial and spiritual lines, but they won't conflict. We'll find our deepest allegiance to Prabhupada's order is Mahavakya, that we cooperate. And that's most pleasing to Prabhupada and Krishna. So at the last SGGS we did exercises, Sannyasa Guru, GBC Sangha, exercises. It was darkly humorous. It was funny because we were all given exercises to do. The ideal attitude of the ideal temple president attitude toward a traveling preacher, and then the ideal attitude of the traveling preacher toward the local yatra, the local temple. The best and the worst. The worst scenario and the best scenario. And then one group even did a skit on the stage of ideal and worst. And it was really powerful because there's nothing like drama to drive home the point. So anyway, it's all about cooperation. And we won't, conflict if we're all in that cooperative mood. Okay, so next one.
By taking full shelter of Srila Prabhupada as Shiksha Guru in his Vani manifestation, all teachers in ISKCON on various levels of advancement will be able to authentically convey Srila Prabhupada's real teachings, thus giving proper guidance, shelter and protection to all.
Full shelter. Most of our problems have come from straying from Prabhupada's life, teachings, mood, and mission. So when we really are Founder-Acharya focused, there's less chance we'll go off course. Yeah. Thus giving proper guidance, shelter, and protection to all. Historically in ISKCON, whenever temples or even whole yatra, whole regions have gone off the deep end, it's because they've just forgotten about Prabhupada, basically, and started going to their own concoctions. Prabhupada wants us to be creative, but he doesn't want us to concoct. He wants to be creative within the parameters of parampara. Unity and diversity does not mean unity and perversity. It means diversity means within the bounds of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Okay. Next.
ISKCON's teachings will remain consistent over space and time.
Yeah, similar idea. Because time tends to distort, and it's like Krishna said to Arjuna, right? Sakale neha mahata. But in the course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore I'm speaking to you again. So instead of getting farther and farther away from Srila Prabhupada, every generation should actually get closer and closer if we're operating on the spiritual energy, and not simply letting time take its course and break everything up. There's a word for that in science, entropy. Things go from wholeness to dispersion. But it doesn't have to be like that if we're actually focused on Prabhupada's life, teachings, mood, and mission. Next bullet point.
Prabhupada's realized knowledge, endowing him with the specific potency to spread Krishna consciousness, will not only be preserved but also developed.
Yeah. Similar point again. It's like Prabhupada in the 70s, he kept talking about the Temple of Understanding. That was the name he gave to the TOVP. First name. And it went through different changes of concepts. So now what's emerging in Mayapur is, wow, it's really something. Not only preserved, but developed. So that temple is developing. What do they say? Raising the temple by every devotee's hand. The fundraisers always say that. Yeah, that's the only way it's going to manifest. If everybody gets on board. And it's happening more and more. And a similar point.
His books will remain central to us, for they contain insights and directions that await future development to be realized.
Right. Like, for example, Varnashram. It's in the books, it's all over the books, it's in his spoken word, but it's not really manifest so much yet. Await future development to be realized. So Prabhupada spoke and wrote about so many things. He's given us enough to do for the next 10,000 years. There's no lack of engagement or work to do. Okay, and?
Srila Prabhupada's eyes will always remain the lens through which all future generations see our predecessor acharyas.
Yes, so I've been saying this, yeah. As soon as we start to see Prabhupada through others' eyes, we're in another Sangha. We can do that if we want, but if we want to be in his ISKCON Sangha, we have to see everything through his eyes. It's really important. And we can only do that if we're really grounded in his vibration, his words, spoken and written. Okay, now, let's see. Oh yeah, so, now be honest. How many people actually did, at the beginning of this series, write down their relationship with Srila Prabhupada? Or made something in their mind? You did. What did you say at the beginning? What's your relationship with Prabhupada? Can you tell us, Prabhu?
It was...
Oh, let's get the mic. Turn it on.
So I honestly didn't have a really intimate relationship with Srila Prabhupada because I didn't know much about him. I started reading Linamrita very recently, so the only thing that I was trying to understand first I was just trying to understand his accent, to be honest. So
Yeah.
that was probably the one thing that deterred me from listening to his lectures because it was very hard to understand. So when I started this course, I started understanding his accent a little bit better.
When you started this course?
Yeah, just before this course, yeah.
Oh.
So I started understanding his accent a little bit more.
Because you were just getting practiced at hearing him.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my relationship with him was mainly because of my Shiksha Gurus and stuff, whatever I've heard about Srila Prabhupada. But I've never had any intimacy with him. I appreciated him, I appreciated his mood and appreciated what he did. But to that extent that I can come to Australia and sitting in Australia rather than being in a pub, I'm sitting in a temple room, that made me realize like that's his potential. Because of him, I'm sitting here and not in a pub right now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you realized at the beginning. So then I always ask, how has our Founder-Acharya journey influenced your relationship with Srila Prabhupada? Hopefully for the better. What did you find taking this journey?
This course has actually, I have no words to explain how I feel about Srila Prabhupada right now because it is a combination of a lot of different things. Like I feel like he's a father. Like I've never felt that close to Srila Prabhupada before. And I feel like when I look at him and I look at his photos and stuff, like going through just slides, when I look at his photos, it's completely different. And still, then I never used to look at what his mood is in a photo, but now when I look at his photo, I can see that how happy and compassionate he looks. And his mood, understanding his mood, I know what his mood was now a little bit, and I feel very inspired by whatever he's done.
So it sounds like you've discovered Prabhupada as a real spiritual father. How are you going to keep that realization? Because realizations need to be nurtured or else they're forgotten.
I've got my Shiksha Guru here, he'll keep me.
It's a good start, you need a mentor.
Yeah.
People always ask me, what do we do now? I say, well, have a Lilamrita Sangha. Have a Lilamrita support group. Or start there, you know. When people approach me for initiation, I say, oh, well, why don't you come over once a week and we'll read about Prabhupada's life. We'll see how it goes. Because I have my mission in the vision, and if this is going to work, it hasn't yet, by the way. If this is going to work, you're going to have to be interested in this kind of Founder-Acharya focus. That's my angle. That's my aspect. Thank you. That was really, that's good. Then I know this has value. Would anybody else write something down near the beginning and then... Most people don't. I'm glad you're honest. You are Brahmin, you're honest. All right. So benefits of deep... Okay, we just read that. Now by the end of the lesson, students will be able to describe how Srila Prabhupada is for everyone. Describe how we can better connect with our own Srila Prabhupada and reflect an aspect of his limitless glories. Explain how to represent Srila Prabhupada effectively while sharing his unique legacy. And finally, we should be able to identify the benefits of deeply understanding Srila Prabhupada's unique position as spelled out in Ravindra Swarupa's bullet points. Okay, so it's 4:38, but I can stay a little while. This is the last lesson. I want to thank everybody for coming. Hope I can... Priya Mataji, who serves me lunch every day, and breakfast, and snack. She said, why don't you come back every year, because this is the only temple that requires this seminar. So you can come every year. So I said, maybe. We'll see. So, does anybody have any questions or comments about how Srila Prabhupada is for everyone? And that's really the point. Not just for 4,780 endangered species. Yes, Prabhu. You got that. And if you need to move on, that's fine. If you want to go to another service.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for the nice class. In terms of courses in ISKCON, we have Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, and I think I don't remember properly, but there are a few different codes regarding how these courses should be done. So I was just thinking whether they have been, Prabhupada said that we should do this, but do they have they been properly categorized, like diploma, bachelor's, master's, PhD? Is there any category that Bhakti Shastri falls into this?
Yeah, Prabhupada, he talked about that.
So how
he said, Prabhupada said, because at least in America, I don't know how it is in Australia, but if you get an associate's degree, a 2-year associate's degree, what do they call it here? Associates? A 2-year degree, Prabhupada called it bachelor.
Yeah, bachelor's.
And then a 4-year degree, not bachelor, it's 4 years. So it's AA, associate something, AA, what do they call it? Associate something. A 2-year degree is an associate's degree. We say junior college or community college. And a 4-year degree is a bachelor. That's a BA. So the associate's degree, Prabhupada said, is like Bhakti Shastri. And then the 4-year bachelor degree is Bhakti what's Bhakti Shastri? Those 4 books, right? Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, Gita Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita. So that's the basic. Then you go on to a 4-year. Very often in America, if you get 2 years, then you can transfer to the 4-year college. So that's like going from Bhakti Shastri to Bhakti Vaibhav. And that Bhakti Vaibhav is the first 6 cantos. I think you know this here, right? Yeah, cantos 1 through 6. And that's the bachelor's. And then Bhakti Vedanta is the second 6, canto 7 through 12. That's like the master's degree. And then Bhakti Sarvabhauma, Prabhupada said that's the whole CC, in addition to everything else. That's the PhD. And I think Gaurajan Prabhu is still working on the Bhakti Sarvabhauma, if I'm not mistaken. So we're still working on, getting all those. And, if you get a Bhakti Shastri certificate or you get a Bhakti Vaibhav, it doesn't have any weight yet in the material world. But Prabhupada, he gave hints to the devotees of how to get, because Prabhupada wanted a university at Mayapur, a Mayapur University. We have the beginnings of it at MI, Mayapur Institute. But ultimately what Prabhupada wanted us to do, to make those degrees, to carry some weight, is to affiliate with an already accredited university, like he said, University of Calcutta. And then in Bhaktivedanta College in Belgium, in Rotterdam, that's what they did. They affiliated with University of Wales, Lampeter, and then there was another one they went to, I'm not sure where they're affiliated now. But that's the idea. Because when you get a degree, if you're affiliated, when you get a degree from the university that people know. And you're like your college, like MI or Radhadesh, Bhaktivedanta. That would be like a satellite. I think they call it open study program or something. It would carry more weight because you're getting it from an accredited university. So we're still working on that. Still growing it, still growing ISKCON education, still growing teachers, students. Did you have one more?
And same thing, Guruji. Sometimes we say diploma. Is that associate is called diploma also?
The what?
Diploma.
What about it? Yeah, what about diploma?
Well, sometimes we say, like you said, there is associate something and then there is bachelor's. But do we call, because I have a diploma also, diploma. There is Bhakti Shastri called a diploma.
Well, Prabhupada called a diploma in that letter. Remember, I wish that all my sons and daughters would inherit the Bhaktivedanta. How did he say the diploma? I forget the word. Will inherit. Oh, the title of Bhakti. Anyway, he said diploma in there somewhere. Diploma just means certificate. It's a recognition of a certain level of competent qualification, whether it's associates or bachelors or masters or PhD. So whether it's Bhakti Shastri or Bhakti Vaibhava or Bhakti Vedanta or Bhakti Sarvabhauma. Because, the way ISKCON started, Prabhupada started ISKCON, he just worked with what he had, like scrap tools. So scrap people, we were like scraps. We were the dropouts of society. We weren't the best and the brightest, but we were the luckiest. Somehow or other, we took shelter at Prabhupada's feet. And so with this scrap tools and no money and, he just did the impossible. Because he had Krishna's blessings. And but he was always saying, now if we had help from the government, we had, and you guys do get help from the government. So that's the way it spreads. Like Prabhupada said about Buddhism. Buddhism spread all over India because Maharaja Ashoka became Buddhist. He became the patron. And can you imagine if Tulsi Gabbard got elected President of the United States? Definitely that would be a boost for the Hare Krishna movement. We'd be seen as more mainstream because there's a lady who's taken her oath of office in the United States Congress on the Bhagavad Gita. So these are all things awaiting future development, future something to be realized. What did you have in mind? Okay, so be a part of the advancement of the movement. It's still, after 50, we had our 50 years, right? 50 years of ISKCON. If you know anything about the history of ISKCON, look what we've been through. In the first 50 years, it's been a wild ride. And yet we're pretty much intact. We're not doing too bad compared to what happens. Usually new movements, whether it's religious or political or whatever, they don't usually last more than 100 years. Like Marxist-Leninism, the Bolsheviks, 1917, and then in 1989, the whole thing was finished, the Soviet. So we're still, we got a foothold, but to make it really sustainable and last, we have to really develop it more in terms of so many things. Our own economy, our own better guru-disciple culture, But we're not doing too bad. Especially in Melbourne. I just met an elderly lady this morning walking her greyhound dog, old greyhound dog. The dog's name was Shelby, and this lady's name was Carol. And I knew she was friendly because as I was walking, and usually most people they ignore you, but then this lady was smiling as I was approaching. She was and I could see she wanted to say something. So I always immediately talk about the dog. It's all about the dog, right? I said, "Who's your friend?" "Oh, this is Shelby." And then she just shared how she always takes her friends to Gopal's. And she's been here, but she loves Gopal's. It's an institution, she said. You people have been here so long, and I tell my friends, "Well, why do you eat?" Because they say, "Why are you a vegetarian?" And I say, "Well, why do you eat meat?" "I'm a vegetarian because I feel better." And that's just the beginning, So I can see that you have really good relationships. It's great. It's a great start. Okay, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Very blissful to see you because we have taken Prabhupada darshan. So having your darshan is very blissful. Prabhuji, one question. like Prabhupada's life, mode, mission was very, very probably consistent, clear. While in...
It was what? It was...
Okay, Prabhupada's mood and mission, life, mode, mission is like very clear.
Clear.
Yeah. Just asking your opinion why today in the parampara there are so many different moods and mission. I mean...
you mean in ISKCON?
In ISKCON, like... if we see one Guru Maharaj, his mood mission varies from other Guru Maharaj mood mission. If we see one region, the mood mission of one region is different than the mood and mission in another region, another part. How is it? I mean, just explain a little bit, because if everybody is propagating Prabhupada's mood and mission as it is, then it would be so simple, just go and surrender to any Guru Maharaj.
No, not really. I mean, this is actually the point of tonight's lesson. Prabhupada has so many different aspects. So when we're connecting with a God family and a Guru, we're connecting with an aspect of Prabhupada. So Devamana Maharaj is very good at, urban preaching and bridge preaching, and that's definitely, that was Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the original bridge preacher, reaching out to the West. So he's really good at that. And somebody else will really be good at conquering the world through music, right? Kirtan. And somebody else will be really good at conquering the cultural conquest through farming, culture and agriculture. These are all different aspects of the same mission. Prabhupada's mission, like himself, is a many-splendored thing. It's a many-faceted jewel. So don't think it's a different mission. But because Prabhupada is so vast and his mission is so vast, there are so many different aspects, which is great. ISKCON can accommodate so many different types of people doing different things. And that's why it's so important to connect with Srila Prabhupada deeply, because then you see where it's all coming from. It's coming from the same place, but it's very variegated. It's very personal. So don't see a conflict. If your Guru Maharaj, or somebody else's Guru Maharaj, is giving you Srila Prabhupada in a certain way, just appreciate that and connect with Prabhupada through that. Through deity worship, there's so many aspects. Here it's just, the whole country of Australia is practically prasadam realized. You're becoming holy by eating holy food. So much. So, don't see a contradiction. Just see variety. See unity in diversity. Okay?
Thank you sincerely on behalf of Mahaprabhu for sharing your deep recognition.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada.